Hello. Hey. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Revelation. The New World Order. The New World Order.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is the 13th today, Friday the 13th. Happy Friday. Wow. Have I been getting the date wrong all week? I think I might have. Welcome to the podcast. This is Rudy's Revelation, finding revelation in the news and meeting in media. War with Iran. Israel has launched airstrikes against Iran. And if Bibi's war on Gaza is any indication of what's going to happen, this doesn't look pretty. Also, 2020 Redux, rioting forever. The Democrats are resigned in sowing chaos and then wagging the finger at Donald Trump and saying this is Donald Trump's fault when they're just using the same playbook they did in 2020. But this time in the first year of his presidency, launching a color revolution, I guess to bring socialism to America. Although not Bernie Sanders socialism, their own type of socialism. All right, got a lot of news to get through today. So why don't we get into it? Let's read the news. All right, we're going to start off with Fox News. Israel launches sweeping strike on Iran while Trump administration seeks diplomatic solution. Netanyahu says fight is not with the Iranian people. Fight is with Iran's dictatorship. This is propaganda, what Bibi says. The point was made yesterday, and I covered it during yesterday's show. The Wall Street Journal had the headline that Iran says they will increase uranium enrichment. So you might have heard about all the talks going on with Iran and Trump. And basically the line, the red line in the sand, or the line in the sand, I'm mixing metaphors there, is that, well, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And there are two reasons for this. The reasoning behind this is that Iran has vowed to destroy Israel, wipe it off the map, push it into the sea, whatever rhetoric they were using. So when you use that kind of rhetoric and then you try to develop nuclear weapons, you can kind of see who the target is for a possible nuclear aggression. And so they've been moving forward with their sophisticated missiles, ballistic missile technology. And so they already have the delivery capacity for a nuclear weapon. They proved they could strike Israel. I'll bet defensive efforts by Israel with the the Iron Dome. So we're not sure, but still any nuclear weapon that might explode over Israel could prove devastating nonetheless. Not to mention that a small nuclear device can be smuggled into Israel, which would undermine their Iron Dome defenses. So is this the kickoff of World War III? Hard to say. If the conflict expands, and we don't know exactly, that's the thing, when wars start, you don't know where the fire is going to spread. So we're going to have to wait and see. We'll have to see exactly what kind of retaliation Iran is planning. They said that any attack by Israel on Iran will be viewed as an attack by the United States on Iran. Again, we've talked a lot about Hezbollah sleeper cells in the United States, what kind of carnage they could wrought, but we'll really have to see. Anything that could be traced back to Iran obviously will be problematic for that state. All right, other breaking news. The Associated Press appeals court temporarily blocks judge's ruling to return control of National Guard to California. If you haven't been watching this story, it's developed quite a bit. There have been a few twists and turns here. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals Thursday evening, late in the afternoon, temporarily blocked a federal judge's order that was given earlier in the day that directed President Donald Trump to return control of the National Guard troops to California after he deployed them there following protests in Los Angeles over immigration raids. Okay, so the President of the United States has the right to nationalize State Guard, which is what the National Guard is. It's the National Guard, but it's controlled by the states. But he could federalize it. That's within the presidential powers to do. It's been done several times in the past. Those nationalizations of Guard troops or federalizing of Guard troops were never questioned when the other presidents did it. It's because it's Donald Trump, and it has to do with immigration, illegal immigration, mind you. And a lot of people have been spouting online going, wait, I don't understand what's going on there. Here, they're in the country illegally, so they're being rounded up to be deported. What's the problem? And the problem is there are people within the United States, allies of illegal immigration or illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, that feel that people that come here get to stay. It doesn't matter how they get here, illegally or not. And what we're going to get to in just a second also is that there's some coordinated influencer campaign online talking about that it's a civil charge. It's a civil infraction by people that don't really know the law. A criminal infraction is a criminal infraction. If you call a misdemeanor a civil infraction, it's still criminality, regardless of it's a misdemeanor. If jaywalking is a crime, and it is a crime, if there's a statute or ordinance against it, then It is what it is. It's criminality. But again, we're going to talk about the moral justification, the Overton window, what's legal and what's permissible. Just because something is a civil crime, a civil penalty, it's not really civil, and we can get into the distinction between the two in just a second, because in civil matters, that's concerned between two private parties. That's the understanding. So the verbiage is confusing the leftists out there that's saying crossing the border illegally is like jaywalking. Well, if jaywalking is not permissible in your municipality, then it's not permissible. Story goes on to say the court said it would hold a hearing on the matter on Tuesday. The ruling came only hours after a federal judge's order was to take effect at noon today. Earlier Thursday, U.S. District Court Judge Charles Breyer ruled the guard deployment was illegal. Of course he did. and both violated the 10th Amendment and exceeded Trump's statutory authority. It didn't really. The order applied only to the National Guard troops and not the Marines, who were also deployed in LA protests. The judge said he would not rule on the Marines because they were not out on the streets yet. What does that have anything to do with it? If someone conducts an order, then it's an order. It's the order that's in question, not the deployment. And the point is, it doesn't violate the 10th Amendment, and it doesn't violate Trump's statutory authority, because presidents have done this in the past. So if they have done it in the past without challenge, it sets what's called a precedent. So if it wasn't illegal in that case, it can't be illegal in this case. And as many people have said, if Gavin Newsom or Karen Bass restored order, then they wouldn't have to do it. Trump is trying to prevent the 2020 redo, which is what the Democrats are trying to get started. And they're looking for that catalyst. They tried to do it with Padilla. We're going to get there in just a second. Senator Padilla. But let's first go to the post-millennial LA anti-ICE protests organized handout American flags to agitators to dispel bad optics of waving foreign flags. Video posted to social media show protesters holding brand new American flags, with some stating on camera that they were given the flags by others in the protest. And we're gonna get into the legitimacy in just a second. I went with the AP article. There was also an article in the New York Times that's just ringing my memory right now about what they were saying about the Mexican flag being wove at protests. But first, we're going to go to Zero Hedge. Anti-ICE propaganda being spread by coordinated influencers. I just mentioned this a second ago. There appears to be a new coordinated and funded effort to get online influencers to rally anti-ICE sentiment and encourage leftists to oppose the efforts to enforce immigration law. And it shows these three women, I guess, who were influencers, and they use the same talking points. And you often see this with Democrats using scripted language. Being undocumented is like jaywalking. Being undocumented is like jaywalking. Being undocumented is like jaywalking. Said by three separate online influencers, all women, by the way. And that's when they got into talking about it's a civil infraction. It's a civil infraction. It's a civil infraction. It's not. They're misinterpreting, categorizing crimes as being less serious than felonies. It's not felonious to cross the border illegally, just like jaywalking. But when they say civil, usually in legal parlance, civil means between two private entities, not the government. And the government is concerned with law enforcement. When you break a law or ordinance, you're committing a crime, whether it's jaywalking or not. So, first of all, jaywalking is the responsibility of the municipality to enforce. It's not a federal crime or federal civil infraction, whatever the fuck that is. So if a municipality decides not to enforce jaywalking, that's their right. They shouldn't even have it on the books. The reason jaywalking, first of all, the reason jaywalking is an ordinance in most municipalities, especially busy cities and such anyway, is for the insurance companies. That way, if people cross outside the crosswalk, you know, in between the block, whatever, and they get hit by a car, that the driver doesn't have to pay insurance to somebody who was acting stupidly. All right. All right, let's just hold on because I was rushing today. I had my brother on the phone and he's going through some issues. So I just want to make sure that I don't get into this story right now because we're not talking about that. We are talking about rioting. And so you saw with the last story that there's coordination going on here. You saw it with the influencers. They're using scripted language. If you look for similarities, the similarities occur with the scripted language, using scripted language with the establishment, the liberal establishment, particularly liberal talking points from Democrat politicians. You see this all the time. They'll use the same scripted language when referring to something. So now that you have these online influencers do it, so they're obviously getting the talking points from somewhere. Those three girls weren't sharing talking points amongst themselves. So they're getting more than likely funded because then they use the script. If you're getting funded by somebody, you do what they say. Post Millennial is reporting 3 Antifa militants arrested for attempting to set fire at a Portland ICE facility, assaulting police. The Portland police facility has been a historic target. The Portland ICE facility, I should say, not a police, it's a federal building. Historic target for the leftist extremist group, Antifa, throughout the years, beginning with Trump's first term in office. And this is the federal building that they laid siege to for 3 months. So on Wednesday, Antifa militants mobilized to attack the ICE facility in Portland, Oregon, resulting in 3 arrests. The masked suspects ignited a fire against the building after blocking the main entrance with a pole. So they tried to, that means they tried to burn the people in the building. One of the accused assaulted a police officer. And then Andy Ngo they released the names of the arrested, and Andy Ngo the famous Antifa reporter, founder of the Quell, found out the names and he identified them as Antifa. I thought I had more text from that. From Issues and Insights, suddenly journalists don't want to follow the money. That used to be a watchword for investigative journalists. If you want to uncover corruption, find out where the money is coming from and where it's going. At least it used to be. Today, not so much, at least not when it could implicate Democrats or upset the left's agenda. So we saw what was happening with the scripted language. There were reports on the internet by people involved, people taking money to protest. Some people say $150 a day. Some people say $200. Alex Jones yesterday was saying that some commanders of militant and riotous activity could get up to $1,000 a day. Post Millennial also reports Antifa anarchist blog post claims responsibility for torturing NYPD vehicles in Brooklyn. The cars were just waiting there, practically begging for a makeover. The post from the Antifa-affiliated blog read. Here's the issue. Antifa is like the Nazi brown shirts. They are street thugs, really recruited anarchists, and the left loves to recruit anarchists because, like I said yesterday, the anarchists burn it down, and then the socialists build up the new state in its place. An Antifa-affiliated blog claimed responsibility for the arson attack at the 83rd Precinct in Brooklyn. Again, Andy No is the one that ferreted this out. Moving on to the Federalist. Tim Walz refuses to apologize for calling federal agents Nazis. Just so you know, I went into this yesterday. The ad hominem, the labeling, the demonization of conservatives as Nazis and fascists is a well-known one. But who came up with the term fascist? Well, it's the communists. So everybody who's the person that uses the word fascist or Nazi are Soviet-style Marxist-Leninists. They're communists. The Maoists have been using that language too, but usually they will use other language, but I'm not gonna define those two different branches of communism and why one is worse than the other, but more sophisticated in a sense, culturally. I don't mean the culture is sophisticated. I mean their war on culture is very sophisticated. You see Maoism being used by the Democrat left all the time. It's the culture war. The Soviets weren't that concerned with culture war as they were with the control of production, which that's why it's more Marxist-Leninist than it is Leninist specifically than it is Maoist. Maoist is more cultural. And so you see that cultural war. But this is steeped in it. And moving over to China, let's go to China right now, where the Federalist says Tim Walz refuses to apologize for calling federal agents Nazis. Who did that? Well, Tim Walz did. Minnesota governor. Tim Walz, the almost vice president of the United States, repeatedly refused during a Thursday congressional hearing to apologize for comparing ICE agents to the Gestapo. Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo was scooping up folks off the street. Walz said, they're not scooping up folks off the street. They're not folks. They're criminal aliens for the most part, or illegal aliens, undocumented aliens, if you wish. But Walz said this in a commencement speech at the University of Minnesota. They're in unmarked vans. When has police work? Police have often used unmarked vehicles. What does that have anything to do with it? They wear masks because the left has been doxing ICE agents. And so for fear of retaliation and to protect their families, the agents have been hiding their identities, which I don't care. I don't care. Now, if all of a sudden federal agents, fuck the left, because the left didn't have anything fucking to say about the FBI when the FBI was murdering innocent civilians. Murdering innocent civilians and organizing, taking part in nefarious crimes. But no one talked about the fucking FBI. The left never talked about the FBI. That's the fucking Gestapo. Has it changed under the new administration? Maybe, hopefully. But the FBI, it was really the United States Secret Police. the way they were engaging. They're supposed to be an investigative body. They turned into an intelligence body. It's not what they should be. Because an intelligence operations go into some morally murky territory. And they shouldn't be conducted in the United States. In a free country, you shouldn't have intelligence bodies operating against the domestic population, especially citizens. So Waltz went on and said they're in unmarked vans, are wearing masks, are being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. I mean, come on. That's not even, there is no evidence that they're being shipped. I mean, it's all rhetoric. There are no torture dungeons. They're not Gestapo. This is all rhetoric used to inflame people who are emotionally triggered. They know what they're doing, mind you. Story goes on to say Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, asked Waltz a series of yes or no questions about the Holocaust and the historical German Gestapo, including whether Waltz knew that they committed genocide against the Jews. Did you know ICE has done none of that? Of course he hasn't. It's just because it's rhetoric used to inflame libtards, people that take action on emotional stimulation, emotional triggers. And now we go to the PJ Media from Nazi to tyrant, how the left tries to shift the moral center. Bush was a Nazi, a history of a moral high ground in the early 2000s. If you disagreed with the left, you were just wrong. You were a Nazi. The ultimate slur, the go-to insult, the end of discussion. My problem with this, obviously, is that, as I said before, if you call people a Nazi, it's because they don't think like you, is because you're a communist. All right? First of all, Nazis were National Socialists, which means they were more right than Stalinists, but they were still socialists. They were fascists in the sense that they let the corporations, they worked in tandem with the corporations instead of nationalizing those companies. That's the difference. But the Nazis were socialists also. So using that as some sort of right-wing slur can easily be defeated by saying Nazi stands for National Socialist. Simple. Article goes on to say, though, once Nazi ran out of gas, the left pivoted to the less explosive but more strategic terms: tyrant, fascist, threat to democracy, strongman, and authoritarian. Well, the thing is that tyrant, we're the ones, the libertarians, the liberty-minded people are the ones that are fighting tyranny. Because once you start encroaching on individual liberties, you are indeed a tyrant. It's really corporate tyranny, because I'm not going to digress into the real fascism. And then there's more. From Nazi to tyrant to fascist, the evolution of ID tags over the past 25 years, the left has become fluent in what Orwell called newspeak, the ability to twist language into emotional cudgels, indeed. If you're skeptical of climate policies, you're a denier. If you support ICE, you're a fascist. If you question vaccine mandates, you're a bio threat. Well, I guess call me a bio threat. And like I said, all these things, the climate policy and the vaccine mandates were authoritarian. That is indeed tyranny, because it infringes on your individual liberty. All right, I wanted to connect this story, but I was running late already, to what we mentioned earlier, which was the whole thing about the flags. And it was a post-millennial article LA anti-ICE protests organized hand out American flags to agitators to dispel bad optics of waving foreign flags. Well, I went over that post-millennial art story yesterday, and now the AP has Mexican flags at LA protests sparked debate over symbolism. That's why they were handing out American flags. Over the past week, a sea of green, white, and red Mexican flags have become a fixture of Los Angeles protests against immigration raids. And then I went into the Aztlan idea, the ideology behind Mexican reclamation of California and the Southwest United States, which I said is ridiculous. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But the presence of Mexican flags and this Chicano nationalist movement that's been around since really the late 60s, and I went over that yesterday with Aztlan, explaining what Aztlan is. It's Aztec reclamation of the Aztec Empire, shit like that. But we're going to get into the fact that the use of Mexican and other Latin American flags during the protests are a form of symbolism many conservatives are calling anti-American. Well, it is, because you're waving a foreign flag in the United States while you're breaking the law. While others argue they're an expression of pride in one's homeland that could not be more American. I disagree. I think if you are a Mexican American and you want to hang a Mexican flag outside your house, more power to you. You want to have a Mexican flag on your car? Great. That's self-expression. When you are committing violence, if you're rioting and waving a foreign flag, that means you're an agent of that country undermining U.S. security and sovereignty. Frankly, you should be arrested. And if you're found to be a foreign national committing crimes as you wave a foreign flag and you're a national of that country, you should be seen as an enemy combatant. If I was a German or a South African or whatever, if I shot up a bunch of people and then waved that foreign flag and said, "Viva South Africa," you could be seen as an enemy combatant. Especially if you then go ahead and like burn the American flag or whatever. So the story goes on to say, whether it be U.S., Mexican, or Palestinian flags, the banners reflect a nation of immigrants whose stories have become intertwined with the story of American experts. I don't know what experts the AP is talking to. Chris Hernandez, associate professor of history at Connecticut College, said the flying of foreign flags in the U.S. has always brought awareness to the plight of marginalized groups. As always? Sometimes. Always. Always brought awareness to the plight of marginalized groups. Their appearance in the latest protest might symbolize solidarity with their native land or social movements that support Americans of Mexican descent, he said. Or does that apply to the Ukrainian flag? It's just fucking ridiculous. They just find these people to fill out their narrative. And it's the same thing they do. They shop around for sources. It's the same way that the Democrats, when they file lawsuits, they shop around for judges. So the AP shops around for somebody who will fit the narrative. They have a list in their Rolodex of go-to people. They probably have them color-coded what these people could do for their story. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt told reporters that flying Mexican flags at immigration protests were left-wing radicals that attacked law enforcement agents was removing violent criminal aliens from the city. And even fierce Trump critic, former Representative Adam Kinzinger, a Republican, expressed his displeasure with the display of non-American flags. at immigration protests that have spread to other states. Peaceful protests are fine. Violence is not and will only destroy the message. So that's what he's worried about. He's worried about destroying the message, Adam Kinzinger. The message is that if you know anything about illegal immigration, it undermines the economy of the United States, the financial ability of its citizens, and poses a lot of other cultural issues if these groups fail to assimilate, like we saw in Europe. All right, the Federalist, the claim that America stole California from Mexico is an ignorant lie. Indeed it is. Recently, Katy Perry claimed on her Instagram page that California has always belonged to Mexico and is another example of racism and bigotry. Wait. A little more complex. Prior to the Spanish arrival in 1542, there were more than 100 different tribes inhabiting modern-day California. Most were small in total population. The area is estimated to be approximately 300,000 in 1542. Mostly Native American. Indigenous, if you will. Although there were some minor explorations and small settlements, Spain left California largely unexplored. They're mostly just missions here or there, and settled for nearly the next 200 years. This was due to a combination of factors such as distance from Spain, the strained Spanish finances, and also because there were no pack animals, little agricultural tradition, and food supply that was less appealing to Spanish palates. We're going to go on. By the end of the early part of the 19th century, however, Spain's fortunes were changing. The empire had stretched too thin. And after a decade of fighting, Mexico gained its independence in 1821. Well, let's just stop here and let me tell you that Hispanic people of Central and South America have interbred with indigenous people, whatever, but the Hispanics living there are from Spain. Their heredity is from Spain. Except for Brazil, okay? It's Portugal. So let's just keep that in mind. Okay, it's not like, let's just get back to the truth of the matter. The population of California in 1800 was approximately 300,000, almost all natives, essentially the same as it had been for centuries. By 1848, however, it had dropped to half of that due to disease, which was responsible for 68% of the decline in the Spanish working to death or killing the natives. Indeed. The census of 1850 recorded California's population at approximately 92,000, but the number had only considered the number of whites. It did not include blacks, Indians, or Spanish-speaking residents, which some had interbreeded, and it was just, there weren't many Spanish there to begin with. Over the next 20 years, the native population would decline to approximately 30,000 to 0.1%. And I'm not condoning why that happened, but let's get on with the story. With disease being the main cause, disease brought by Westerners, but the upwards of 20 to 25,000 deaths from new settlers killing natives. The new settlers being white, and Spanish is considered white. Go to Spain sometime. Southern Spain is a little different because of the Moors, but I'm not going to digress into that more. All right, so the year of 1848 was, of course, the important year for California for another reason, the discovery of gold at Sutter's Mill would bring over 300,000 prospectors and treasure hunters into the state from across America and elsewhere. By 1860 census, the population of the state was recorded as 379,000, 90% of whom were white. And this was before California was part of America, mind you. So let's keep that, the story goes on and on, but let's consider that, is that settlers, European settlers, displaced Native Americans as they did in every other part of the country. I think I'm missing part of this story, though. I missed the last page. So in any case, to understand it, when Mexico gained independence, I think it was in 1852. And I thought I had that page here. Most of the people, and it claimed independence, it claimed the western part of the United States. Okay, this was before the westward expansion of the United States. The United States was only the East Coast plus the Louisiana Purchase. Everything else was considered frontier. The point being, though, as it said in this article, in 1850, or in 1860, excuse me, the majority of people in California were white European Americans, frontiersmen, settlers from the United States, not from Mexico, English speakers, for the most part. I mean, there are Germans in there and everybody else who wanted to get gold. So that puts a lid on this Aztlan thing. It's like you're going to reclaim parts of America that Mexico claimed when they declared their independence from Spain, because it used to be Spanish territory. It was all in flux. It wasn't being held by troops or anything like that. The Native Americans have more stake to the western part of the United States than Mexicans will ever have. So let's just make that perfectly clear if you want to talk historically. And as far as I'm concerned, do Native Americans perhaps, should they get reparations? They have, I think they have a more a case than third, fourth generation blacks out of slavery. Just the News is reporting Representative Eric Burleson, big funders backing activist protest has become an open secret. The representative, a Republican from Missouri, commends Representative Anna Paulina Luna for exposing the ties between the Chinese Communist Party activist group at the Los Angeles riots. We all knew that these protests are often paid, or at least organizations are ginning them up, that are funded by George Soros, he says. But in this case, it's the Chinese Communist Party that's actually trying to create all these protests. I wish it were that simple. But it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because the conspiratorial nature of the conspirators, how they are tied without seeming tied. So they're working together secretly. So all the things that tie them together, they keep secret. You could just look at the Biden crime family and their relationship with communist China and all the shell companies they had and who was getting paid and all these things. That's the way they conduct business. They're not like depositing checks from the Chinese Communist Party in their own bank. But all these things are, all these machinations, these riots, these call to actions are all done through intelligence agencies, as was the promotion of socialism from the very beginning. You would never have had the Soviet, you would never had the October Revolution in Russia by the Bolsheviks without help from Western intellectuals and Western states. Reuters is reporting Marines prepare for Los Angeles deployment as protests spread across the U.S. Good for them. Hope they kick some ass. 700 U.S. Marines will be on the streets to support 4,000 National Guard. Outstanding. LA mayor once joined pro-Cuba communist group. Now it's part of the CCP-linked network behind the protests. And here's my issue with this. LA Mayor Karen Bass, who once joined the pro-Cuba communist group, which I told you about yesterday, now it's part of the CC-linked network behind protests. Indeed. I thought I had text on this one too. So this is what I'm talking about. It's a good thing the Marines are here because we're fighting the fucking communists in LA. So if you didn't know, Karen Bass was, in her youth, it's always youthful discretion, joined a pro-Cuban communist group. She's a Cuban communist. And people just don't see it, and I'm not getting all McCarthy on people. It's just McCarthy probably didn't handle the situation correctly because everybody was paranoid. But his general assertion was not incorrect. The way he handled it probably was incorrect. But the general assertion that socialism, for lack of a better word, is indeed a conspiracy. They operate in secret. They operate, socialists, different stripes, operate in tandem to undermine non-socialist groups. Period. There's no other way to explain it. So, of course, the people fighting Trump are communists. They don't have to claim to be, but the Democratic Party is a socialist party now. There are no moderates there. And the thing is, they're socialists in support of global postmodernism. So it's really the way socialism has evolved into postmodernism. The old school socialists, the Leninists and stuff, there's not going to be any room for you anyway. There is either Maoist or they're postmodernists. All the Leninists, they said that didn't work. We've given up on that ideology because it didn't work. All right, more stories. Orlando Sentinel, Florida sheriff warning to violent protesters, "We will kill you graveyard dead." Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey issued a harsh warning Thursday to protesters who use violence in his county. "We will kill you graveyard dead. You throw a brick or a firebomb or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains." I kill you. And hey, I'm not for police overreach by any means. I am not for that. But my problem is, and if we go back to the Portland arrests of the Antifa people, the girl that punched and choked a police officer, she was released the next day without bail. As it's always been put, I think this comes from the movie Dirty Harry, if you ever saw it. Or was it Magnum Force? I think it was Dirty Harry. Criminals who are willing to kill police officers, kill or assault police officers, are way more dangerous to the public because the committing crimes against police has higher penalties, obviously. And, of course, you run the risk, because police are armed, of getting killed yourself. So if they're not worried about attacking police, they're way more dangerous to the public. Just the News is reporting GOP House passes bill to end D.C. sanctuary city statutes. Thank God. Reuters, Bilderberg Group meets in Sweden amid U.S.-Europe tensions. Why amid U.S.-Europe tensions? Why that has to matter. I released some of the list yesterday. Stacey Abrams being at the top of the list. The annual Bilderberg meeting kicks off in Sweden on Thursday, providing a private forum for discussion at a time when the President Donald Trump has upended security economic ties between U.S. and Europe. The high-level networking event was formed in 1954, was held in secret for 45 years. Didn't start coming out publicly till the 90s. If you were in the 60s or 70s or me in the 80s, when you were talking about the Bilderberg group, people are like, what? That's a conspiracy theory. And it wasn't that secret because the first meeting was held and was reported on in 1945, 46. And then subsequent meetings were affirmed, but rarely reported on or rarely regarded. Sean Hannity himself called Bilderberg a conspiracy theory. It does not invite media, and delegates rarely speak about what has been discussed, triggering numerous conspiracy theories about their aims. You don't really need to be a conspiracy theorist to understand what happens there. Most of the public forums are reported on now. You can even get video. But most of the things discussed there are similarly discussed at Davos. Usually the Bilderberg meeting will be the feeder for what to do or what to talk about at the next Davos meeting, which is usually in February, which then feeds into the Bilderberg group that meets in June. More news. New York Post, Trump slams Iran for ignoring chance after chance to make nuclear deal, warns things will get way worse. I gave Iran a chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest words, just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I don't know why that I stick that in there. That was a little out of order. Sorry about that. Next headline. Washington Post, no kings protest nationwide to push back on Trump overreach. Well, it is the Washington Post. There is no overreach. The federal government is fulfilling their responsibilities by conducting deportations of people that are here illegally, starting specifically with criminals. Also, with the not only organic reaction, wasn't really planned reaction to these policies, planned defiance of these policies, physical defiance, has to be met with order. And so he called out the National Guard. He's not going to let what happened in 2020 happen again. He was caught off guard. Obviously, if you go to that same playbook, he's going to, because there were shoulda, woulda, couldas for 4 years under Donald Trump was laying in bed thinking about what he should have done. In the hours before tanks barreled down the streets of Washington for President Donald Trump's grand military parade Saturday, thousands of Americans will gather across the country in defiance of what they call his dangerous brand of authoritarianism. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't believe in military parades, but dubbed 2,000 cities holding No Kings Nationwide Day of Defiance. So basically what we have here is more anti-Trump, planned anti-Trump stuff. Just like in Trump's first term. It's all organized by the left. Leftists don't have the wherewithal to do this themselves. Organized nationwide protests. Let's take the Occupy movement. That was organic. How do you know it's organic? Is because you had Occupy Wall Street. That got press coverage. And then all of a sudden, Occupy things started popping up around the country. It wasn't one day Occupy. Because that needs a great deal of planning. It needs a great deal of planning. There's no more to say. There's a lot of things contingent on that. You have to have infrastructure. You have to have supplies. You need the guy with the truck coming up with the masks. You need people you need people. The color revolution, you have to feed the people who are going out to protest. And I don't mean feed necessarily with food, but with items of protest and whatever. There's a great amount of logistics that go into a single day of protest, national protest. So Antifa, all these people, all these protesters are well funded. We all know about the pallets of bricks and stuff. And they changed from bricks in 2020 to now cinder blocks. Cinder blocks are considerably lighter, and you can break off pieces with a hammer. In response, Governor Abbott deploys 5,000 Texas National Guard troops ahead of planned No Kings protest in the Associated Press. The Daily Beast reports Trump voter gets choked up after ICE detains a third of his staff. So the Daily Beast reports on this guy, Vincent Scardina, a roofing company owner. Turns out most of his roofers were from Nicaragua and are here illegally. Sorry. The Hill, DHS sends out provocative new poster. I thought I don't have the poster here, but the poster said, help your country and yourself, which shows Uncle Sam with a hammer nailing a flyer onto a wall. Report all foreign invaders. And then, of course, the left comes out and says that's reminiscent of what Hitler said, report all the Jews. Illegal immigrants or illegal aliens are not Jews. They're not. This is the difference. If you're rounding up American citizens for political reasons, that's way different than people that came here illegally. And we don't want illegal immigrants in our country. At least the majority of American citizens don't. Particularly, we don't want the illegal alien criminal, migrant crime waves, and we don't need the number of illegal people here. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Before you can ever get at amnesty or the willingness to allow people that are here illegally to remain, two things have to be done. All the criminals have to be removed, and the border has to be enforced. So as soon as the deportation efforts are done, whenever that is, maybe never, that we can talk about reconciliation with DACA dreamers or, other people, what would be the prerequisite for them to be allowed to stay. I hope that day comes too, because it's cheaper to allow people to stay than to remove them. However, criminals can't stay, and this open border policy has let miscreants in and other people with nefarious means. If you didn't know, because of the war with Iran, oil is up. I think in one day went up 5 points, 7 points. More news from the New York Post. At least 4 migrants unaccounted for after riot breaks out at New Jersey ICE detention center. And the thing is with this is the same detention center where the mayor of Newark was arrested and released. And then also that New Jersey Congresswoman, what was her name, MacGyver, was arrested and charged. So did some Democrats there in New Jersey aid in the escape of 4 undocumented migrants? Did they gin up the riot? There's riots breaking out all over the United States, and there happens to be one that breaks out at this ICE detention center. In organizing all these riots, did the liberals engage with prisoners in this ICE detention center? Maybe. That's speculative, of course. Trump calls Israel's attack on Iran excellent and warns a lot more to come. More news. One American News, CIA releases 1,000 pages of RFK assassination, including 54 declassified documents. And what does it say? It just, well, what it does, and always when the CIA releases documents, what does it do? Oh, it turns out to bolster their narrative. There's some you could read it there. Just Sirhan was the lone gunman. No, he wasn't. He was probably mind control. I don't doubt that. But if you look at the ballistics and you listen to witness testimony, the witnesses in the kitchen, it seems like there was a second shooter. One American News again, Trump signs legislation to override California EV mandate, discusses separate new ban. You can do anything. You can't do anything about it. They can't take us to court. They can't do anything they want to do with executive order, and it's permanent, he declared, and they can't. They said it couldn't be done. They'd passed these crazy rules in California and 17 other states, including the one I'm in. Automakers wouldn't know what to do because they're really building cars for two countries when you have 17 states. California's capital, Sacramento, had ordered that 100% of its new cars in the state would be zero-emission vehicles by 2035, with automakers required to sell at least 80% EVs while allowing to fill the rest of their inventory with certified plug-in hybrids, which I think that's the way to go. I mean, if you want to be efficient, there should be a hybrid. I don't believe in all electric vehicles. I mean, unless it's like a station car, you take to the train station and go get groceries or whatever. But vehicles need to go hundreds of miles. And the problem is, if the grid goes down, your car still runs. That's the most important part. If there's no electricity, you can still drive a car. Not only that, but you can generate electricity with your car. Isn't that novel? All right, more news. The Wall Street Journal. The case for rate cuts is growing. Tariff inflation has been muted, non-existent, and cracks are reappearing in the labor market. What does that mean? That means Jerome Powell is purposefully neglecting his duty as chairman of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Europe has done it several times already. We need to spur growth. We need to lower interest rates, at least some, and we need to pass this bill. Otherwise, we're just going to flounder here in this current economic state. Wall Street Journal, again, hundreds of No Kings rallies planned in opposition to Trump. I didn't organize these stories correctly. I'm sorry. Progressive groups hope to cast a split screen with the president's military parade. Yeah, with riots. And of course, also top in the news, Fox News is reporting Democrat senator forcibly removed after crashing DHS Secretary Noem's press conference. California Governor Newsom calls the incident dictatorial while blaming Trump administration for Padilla's detention. He wasn't detained. He wasn't detained. He was arrested because it was a news conference between Kristi Noem and the news media. This is not an open public forum. Now, Senator Padilla is a U.S. senator from the state of California, could have called up Kristi Noem at any point and asked for a meeting. What this was a stunt, and he knew by charging at the defense secretary. Nobody knew who he was. He did not identify himself as a senator when he walked into the room, nor identify himself as a senator before he began shouting out of turn and charging towards Kristi Noem. It was only made clear after he started to be pushed out of the room and arrested, detained, that he said, I'm a senator, but that's not verifiable in a couple minutes. So once he was handcuffed, Once his aides made it clear he is a U.S. senator and that was verified, that he was released. But there was no reason for him to do this. And the way he did it specifically is you don't charge at a department secretary during the Secret Service are there to prevent exactly such things from people, regardless who it is. He wasn't wearing his identification pin, his security pin. So he wanted this to occur. And his actions, his physical actions, he didn't stand in the back and go, "Excuse me, Madam Secretary, I have a question." He started shouting and then charging the podium. And if you're any witness to things, horrific assassination attempts, that usually how it happens. Federalist is reporting Trump is wrong. America shouldn't be admitting Chinese nationals into its university, regardless of his personal feelings on the subject. Trump must place national security interests first. Indeed. Washington Times, high school teacher fired after reading aloud racial slur from To Kill a Mockingbird. If you've ever read To Kill a Mockingbird, you'll know that it uses the N-word in there. So a teacher, Matthew Mastronardi, I guess he was a Spanish teacher. Why he was reading from Kill a Mockingbird, I don't know. Read from that book. And used the N-word. He received a verbal warning, but then his contract wasn't renewed. Market Watch, OpenAI Sam Altman thinks we may have already passed the point at which AI surpasses human intelligence. That would be super intelligence. We've passed. So we've been in general AI, GAI, general artificial intelligence. We've passed the event horizon, he said. The takeoff has started. So far, it's been much less weird than it seems like it should be. Robots are not yet walking the streets, nor of us talking to AI all day. People still die of diseases. We still can't easily go to space, and there are a lot of the universe we don't understand. Oh, so humanity hasn't progressed enough for Sam Altman, so we shouldn't worry about super artificial intelligence, super intelligence. I think we did okay. I think we're at 50 mark. Almost an hour. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe. Leave a comment, share the podcast. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m., live stream on Rumble. You can join me on social media as well, X, Facebook, Get Our Minds, Truth Social, Substack. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically every fucking day. Every time you wake up, your environment, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says, you swim in a sea of chemicals. And psychologically, you're bombarded with false narratives, propaganda, and mind control. All right, thanks for joining me today. Have a great weekend. And I will see you Monday. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You can't handle the truth!
This is a conspiracy.
The New World Order.
You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.